Interstate capture resumes in Parktown tomorrow. The Commission's chair, Deputy Justice Raymond Zondo, is expected to make several rulings. Will this include the Guptas and Duduzane Zuma's application to cross-examine witnesses? While the Commission is also expected to rule on a request by the Gupta brothers to do so via video link. Well, Justice Zondo has already granted Fana Hlongwane, Lakela, Kaunda and Mandla, Mtolo permission to cross-examine witnesses. Joining us in studio now is constitutional law expert advocate Mfesane KaSiboto. Very good evening to you and thank you very much for your time. Quite, I think, significant starting tomorrow, in particular, given the arguments by the lawyers representing the implicated persons last week. What would Justice Zondo need to take into account, in particular when it comes to whether cross-examination should be granted of these witnesses?
I think, by the way, good evening, thanks for having me. I think most importantly, we must bear into mind the whole point of cross-examination. And I think Advocate Michael Hellens brought it to the fore quite crisply and beautifully, which is to say, you can never have full evidence without the cross-examination. So the whole idea is to test the versions that have been untested thus far in terms of their veracity, in terms of are there any loopholes. If anything, actually, they could serve to confirm what we've heard so far. So it's a very important concept, and perhaps that's the focal point the Commission will have to look into.
One of the critical things is what we're seeing for the very first time, I guess. A lot of concerns were raised by the legal representatives about the video link that the Guptas saying obviously they do not have any trust in the authorities in South Africa and would basically not want to come to our shores in order to give their side of the story here. That will have to be done via video link. Would that be in the best interests of the Commission? If you look at cross-examination, for example, how would that then happen? One of the questions that was raised was whether, if the Guptas decided they wanted to pull out of the Commission at any time, what recourse would Justice Zondo have if this issue of the video link was allowed?
It's a diabolical request. That is plainly what it is. The Commission cannot be held to ransom by fugitives. It's as simple as that. And the problem we have with the cross-examination is that the judge, or rather the Commission chair, does not have the benefit of reading body language, which is critical in cross-examination. I could go through a myriad of challenges that would have with a video link. But most importantly, from a public confidence point of view, we cannot be seen, or rather the Commission cannot be seen to wading to the demands of fugitives. It just cannot be. But with that being said, it's very important that they get the account. That is just my personal take on it, to test the veracity of what we've heard, if anything, to strengthen the evidence we've had thus far.
But many would argue perhaps that if you don't have the side of the Gupta brothers, who are at the center of these state capture allegations, if, for example, Justice Zondo says he's not going to allow the video link, and then the Guptas decide they're not going to participate in it because the Commission has not acceded to their demands, would this not be detrimental for what the Commission itself is trying to achieve and trying to get to the bottom of these allegations?
It's relative to what we have in their written submissions. So the evidence lead advocate Vincent Maleka made the point that these people have given us their written submissions, 8 of which they are in common cause with the version that have been given by the witnesses thus far. Where they disagree, those are mere bad denials. So the argument is, what is the point of going to Dubai if all they'll ever do is barely deny? So if we have their written submissions and the Commission has that benefit, then he can weigh the evidence that he has from the oral evidence we've heard, including these written submissions. With that being said, I don't think it's entirely correct to say, well, if you go to Dubai, then all we have is bad denials. It's inconceivable that the question is being put to them and they merely deny. I think at the very least, I think it would be shambolic if we even decided, or rather had the conception of us going to Dubai, or rather Commission going to Dubai. At best, they should have the video link, get the version of the Guptas in Dubai and work on that basis.
I think what will be interesting as well, the whole testimony over the past a couple of days, obviously centered around from the testimony of Themba Maseko, for example, the former CEO of GCIS, on the issue of media buying and how funds had been channeled to the Gupta media companies. Tomorrow, an official from Treasury is going to take the stand. What are we expecting possibly to hear from that?
What I would be expecting to hear is a narration of what happened from the point Themba Maseko, the former head of GCIS, left, to a point where Jimmy Manye joined, because that is the most interesting part.
Yeah.
We wait with bated breath to see what he has to say about it. What I expect to come out of it is basically a narration of how were the state funds abused to fund the TNA and other Gupta entities. So it should be interesting to see.
Well, thank you very much for your time. A pleasure speaking to you. Constitutional law expert Mfesane KaSiboto, thank you very much for your time this evening. Let's go to Cape Town now and...